Yate. My name is Melanie Yazzie. I'm the accountant for Dine Community Development Corporation. I'm going to give an overview of Dine Community Development Corporation and our funder, Native American Agricultural Fund. I will also give an introduction of Mr. Lyle Yazzie. Dine Community Development Corporation is certified by the Navajo Nation IRS 501c3. Mr. Lorenzo J. Begay is the interim director, and Ms. Laverne Begay Todachini is the project director. Dine Community Development Corporation's mission statement states that we provide leadership, program, and resources development that enhances and vitalizes our role surrounding communities such as Navajo, Native Americans, and other underserved populations. The vision statement states we will lead as a recognized leader in economic and community development and will promote self-sufficiency to achieve excellence for Native American communities. Programs and services we provide are COVID-19 agricultural, business, and financial resources, feasibility study and business plan development, nonprofit development and incorporation, Indianpreneurship and financial literacy workshops, board governance training and workshops, cooperative development, strategic planning sessions, grant development and proposal writing, identification of federal, state, nonprofit, and tribal funding grants. The Dine Food Sovereignty Program, taking control of food on the Navajo Nation to promote health, economics, and self-sufficiency by working with Navajo farmers and gardeners. We have 3 YouTube video series with online virtual cooking and gardening workshop to educate Navajo farmers, gardeners, and community members. These videos are available on YouTube and also on our website at dcdc.org/events. Introduction to Navajo Food Sovereignty with Mr. Brandon Francis, and also Navajo Food Demonstration with Dr. Jennifer Jackson Wheeler, and also the Navajo Food Sovereignty Initiative with Mr. Lyle Yazzie. Our funder is Native American Agricultural Fund. The Native American Agricultural Fund is the largest philanthropic organization solely devoted to serving the Native American agriculture community. NAF is a 20-year private charitable trust that will be in existence until September 2038. The mission of the NAF is to provide grant funding in the following areas: business assistance, agriculture education, technical support, and advocacy. The NAF is allowed by the terms of its trust agreement to fund the following types of eligible entities: 501c3 organization, CDFIs, educational organizations, state or federally recognized tribal governments. I now introduce you to Mr. Lyle Yazzie for the Navajo Food Sovereignty Initiative program. He is employed with Tolani Lake Enterprise as lead gardener and farm technician. He is originally from Tolani Lake, Arizona, and enjoys the presence of our youth. He grew up growing traditional crops with his grandparents. His focus is to build healthy soil and bring traditional agriculture back to our youth on the Navajo Nation. His goal is to teach youth the knowledge of growing, building soil health, and improving their talents. His passion for growing and plans to keep moving forward in helping local communities and future leaders continue to grow crops.
Good morning. My name is Laverne Begay Todachini. I represent the Dine Community Development Corporation on the Navajo Nation, and we're on site here. Mr. Lyle Yazzie, who represents Tolani Lake Enterprise, and we'll be doing a walkthrough tour with him. He will let you know what Tolani Lake Enterprise is all about.
Good morning. My name is Lyle Yazzie. I'm the lead market garden technician here at Tolani Lake Enterprises. And Tolani Lake Enterprise is a 6-anchor demonstration garden for building soil health, but then also teaching our youth about food sovereignty. And what we do is we help farmers grow their own locally sourced crops, and we're also teaching for how to run your own market garden, how to do your own farm, and how the ways of growing, and so I'm a big part of this organization, and we do a lot of growing, we do a lot of composting, and we teach a lot of our youth, our future leaders, about Navajo food sovereignty, so that way we can prepare them in the long run. And we do a lot of demonstrations such as soil health, building soil health, but then also running a market garden and teaching our youth the ways of running a market garden. So that's what TLE is about, and that's what we push for.
Okay, thank you, Lyle. This whole series we start off with was based on food sovereignty on the Navajo Nation, and we went through. This is our third series right now. The first one we did was on food, the introduction of food sovereignty. The second one is on food demonstration, and this is our third one, which will be on food sovereignty initiatives. And pretty much those will be our topics right now. We're going to go ahead and start off with Lyle, starting off with the tour. And the first question is, what are the variety of crops do you have at TLC?
So we grow all different types of varieties, from traditional to crops that everyone grows, such as green chilies. We have a lot of our Anaheim chilies that we have grown this year, and then we have a lot of our jalapenos on this side. So we grow all different types of varieties, such as Anaheim, serranos, and jalapenos, and also poblano peppers. And we have different types of tomatoes, also Navajo white corn, the striped squash, and all different types of varieties of squash, asparagus, and we also grow melons. We like to grow melons also. We grow melons, beans. So that's what a lot of the crops that TLE grows. And then we also go by a garden plan every year. And then during the winter, we usually grow garlic. And then we'll grow the leafy greens such as kale, lettuce, and beets. And then also all different types of cold crops that you can grow during the winter that can, handle the hard frost, that can handle the snow. And so we go different routes every single year, and then we try different things that we can grow to see what will grow in this type of climate. So right now, these are all of our jalapenos. We did really good on jalapenos this year. So jalapenos and Anaheim, we did really good on this year. And what we try to do is, see, this is our beds that have cover crops in them. So I do two different methods. I use the composting method, and I use the cover crop method to see which one would produce more food. So as you see, the beds that are cover crop, they are producing a lot more food than the tomatoes. So what we noticed on this bed was it has a lot more organic matter in these beds than those beds, And a lot of these beds are lasagna beds, so they have different layers of manure, straw, and then mulch. And then what that does is it brings all that nitrogen into the soil, but then also it brings up that phosphorus rate on your soil. So this is a whole demonstration on how to build your soil health. And then soil health is important, especially if you want to grow crops, if you want to grow plants. Soil health is the number one main source to growing in your garden. So here's our jalapenos, our chilies, and then we have different types of Roma tomatoes inside our food plots. So the tomatoes, they were planted late, so they're still producing. They're very starting to produce tomatoes. But then what we noticed was our soil needs more attention. So a lot of our soil, we've been trying to put compost around them, and every year is a different method that I try to see what will work with our crops. And one of the main source of managing a garden and a farm, you're gonna run into problems every year. You're gonna run into either livestock getting into your crops, you're gonna run into issues with your soil, you're gonna run into issues with harvesting and then producing. So every single year, it's always something different.
Okay, my next question Lyle, is tell us the difference between cycles of crop versus traditional crops. And it's pretty much in a circular pattern. You have your cultivated plants, which are your seasonal, what comes up and during the season. It can be your veggies or it could be your fruits.
So we do all different types of crops, especially during the summer. The summertime is mainly a lot of our cycle crops, which are tomatoes, chilies, and then corn and squash, and then what we'd like to do is we like to switch them every year. So last year we had our tomatoes growing on this side, and then so every single year we switch them. So we move our chilies on this side, and then we move our tomatoes on this side. Same for the corn, we do because corn takes a lot of nitrogen from your soil. So what we'll do is we'll rotate them, and then we'll grow in a different area every year, and then when we let that soil rest, we'll go back to the other crop. We'll go back to that soil and start all over again. So it's like a cycle. So this is our hoop house. Our hoop house is where we grow a lot of our crops, and especially during the winter, this is where we grow all our cold crops in because it has a clear coat, and what that does, it attracts a lot of sun.
Okay, we're going out of the greenhouse right now, but my next question is, what type of food sovereignty activities and educational projects do you share with the community regarding security and sustainability?
We do a lot of activities, especially with our community, our youth, and also our elders. So, the food sovereignty projects that we do is we teach them about soil health. So we do a lot of workshops, and our workshops we invite a lot of our community and we teach our community. And just like an example of our lasagna beds, we made lasagna beds with youth, our community members, and then we taught them what the lasagna bed does, and then also we do a lot of painting with them. So we do a lot of last 2 years ago we did a project on storytelling videos, but then also we did a project on teaching our community about what they want to draw in their own visual way, and it all has to go do with Navajo food sovereignty, but then also to teaching toward our youth, and then we also teach our youth and then our elders, to keep growing, to keep producing crops, and it's a way to give back to our land.
Okay, Lyle, what new processes have you introduced in growing and harvesting your crops?
So every year I try something different, and the corn that we have grown this year is a good example, and I try to introduce different fertilizers to our soil, and then also composting methods. And what I have done this year was I put compost around the bottom of our corn, but then also I had mixed fertilizers in, and a lot of like the lime and then the humic acid, it brings a lot of calcium and food to our plants, because plants also eat food just like us. And then you gotta when you're running a garden, you gotta try so many ways to see what will help produce the corn. But then also you gotta think about the growth of it, but then how much food it produces. And so this year, what we did was we did fertilizers and then we did compost. And what we have noticed is our compost is our corn have grown a lot bigger compared to last year. Last year, what we did was we had just let it grow in our soil itself with no fertilizer, no compost, and they did a lot. They were a lot smaller than these. But then this year, we tried the fertilizers, we tried compost, and then we tried humic acid and also ambrosia and then earth nectar. So those are all fertilizers, but then also food for our plants. And what we noticed is they have grown a lot taller this year. And and then the other thing is that you have to look out for is, pest control. Pest control is also a new thing that we do, such as squash bugs, such as ants. We have a lot of those issues with a lot of our crops. And so what you gotta do is you have to be out here yourself, to come out here and then get rid of the squash bugs, the pests, and all that, and You know, they'll keep coming back. But one way we notice is we put a coffee can inside our soil and then we fill it with water and sugar. Ants, they're attracted to that. You know, ants will go towards the water instead of our crops. And that was a new thing that started working for us last year. And so we fill our water and we fill sugar because those ants are attracted to it. And they'll just go to that water instead of watering the crops. And then also we try it's called diatomaceous earth. It's a white powder that you put around your crops too that ants and squash bugs also do not like. So and then also water with dish liquid. Water with dish liquid is really good for squash bugs. So water with sugar is for your ants, and then water with dish liquid is for your squash bugs. So that is one way we kept our crops going without any rodents bothering them. You know. And then also we've been having problems with rabbits, gophers, and such things like that. So what we did all around our fence, you know, we dug 3 feet more down. We put chicken wire all around our whole garden, all the bottom of the fence. And ever since we have done that, you know, we have not had any problems with rabbits and gophers getting into our garden. So that was good plus for us this year. And then for such as crows, ravens, and then birds, they love getting into your watermelons. So what we did was we built a little fence that was not that. It's like a little cage that has the regular fence, but then also the chicken wire wrapped around all inside of it. And then we set those on top of our melons, and then we throw the weeds on top so that way they don't see our melons. And that's been working really good for us as well. And so that's one way to take care of your melons if you don't want any of the crows and the birds getting into them, because they love to see the melons out when they're producing.
Explain the difference in raised beds versus your lasagna beds.
Raised lasagna beds, you know, lasagna beds you can make just right into your soil. So lasagna beds is a no-till and no-dig method. So you can grow a lot every year without having to give your soil more attention because it has those layers of organic matter already. And so this is an example of these lasagna beds and what our lasagna beds do. So we have a green layer, a brown layer, a green layer, and a brown layer that all go back on top. So the brown layer is what keeps that carbon inside our soil, but it also keeps the moisture inside. So we like to put dig 2 feet down, a soil, well, basically a shovel length down. And what we'll do is we'll make pocket holes with a digging bar, and then we'll lay cardboard at the bottom first. And then that cardboard, what it does is it keeps the moisture in, but then also it keeps the weeds from coming out from the bottom. It blocks the weeds. And then what we'll do is we'll put straw. So we use these layers, a lot of these straw bales. And then we'll put a whole slice in one portion. And then what that does, it also restores carbon and then also keeps moisture in your soil. And then after that, we'll put a layer of manure on top. And that manure is that organic matter, is that boost of organic matter into your soil. And then also we call it party food. So party food, we like to put it's basically compost. You know, it's a food for our worms inside our soil. And then worms, you know, you want worms in your soil, and then you want poop, the worm poop in your soil. That's a big plus to help to building soil health. And then after that, we just put a layer back on top for your soil. And then see, we watered this Friday. We watered this Friday, and as you can see, it's like still has a lot of moisture. So that's how wet you're gonna want your soil. And so that way, you know, lasagna bed is a big plus because also it keeps moisture in there. So we usually water these beds for 1 day, 8 hours a week, and then they'll stay this moist, and it keeps a lot of that moisture inside your soil. And then for lasagna bed, also, you know, your roots can expand further through your soil. A raised bed, you know, a raised bed is good for smaller crops such as beans, such as all the different crops that have the roots that expand small because they have that base around it. And um, when you have a lasagna bed, you can plant corn, you can plant sunflower, you can plant melons in these, and so that way, when the roots expand, they'll expand through the soil. They just won't stop at the end because raised beds also have the lumber that goes around the bottom, and what that does is it stops that roots from expanding any further. So the less the roots expand, the smaller the growth is. The more the roots expand, the bigger the growth is. And raised beds, raised beds are used for. It can be used as building soil health as well. And raised beds can be. You don't have to dig in a shovel length because they already have that much space to put your soil in. So you don't have to dig in. But usually, what I do when I build raised beds is I still dig in at least a foot more down, and then I put the soil back on top. So that way, because in your crops you want less compaction. You want to minimize compaction, minimize disturbance. So that way, you build diversity in your soil, and then you build that soil health.
Lyle, you offer your produce for sale at local farmer markets. How has this been received? What do you tell people about your produce at the farmers markets?
So we go to, we've been doing a lot of farmers markets, and what I like to tell our customers and also our community members is that all of our crops that we grow here, they're non-GMO and then they're organic. So organic is a more healthier way of growing your crop. But organic is no pesticides, no herbicides, and just growing naturally. And you know, when I grow my crops, I try to be in the most joyful mood. Because I was before all this started happening. I used to help my grandparents growing in the cornfield when I was a little kid, and my grandparents' teachings were always when you're always around your crops, you always gotta be in the most positive mood, so that way your crops will be healthier and then more tasteful to the people you're selling to. And so that's why I like to tell a lot of our community members, and then also I like to encourage them to grow. Try growing yourself, and there's a lot of experiences and a lot of great ways of growing. And I know a lot of farmers, they always say you gotta have the touch for it, but that's one thing I don't believe in. I believe in everyone can grow. I can believe everyone can grow, and everyone has a green thumb for themselves. You just gotta go out there and do it. So that's why I like to tell a lot of my customers, and I like to encourage a lot of my customers to grow, to learn the concept of growing. And then once you start doing it, it's a beautiful thing to do. It's tough. It gets hard at times, but once you start seeing the success for it, you start feeling better yourself. And so that's why I like to encourage to a lot of my local communities.
Lyle, how do you supply the water to your farm?
So right now, what we're doing is we're running off the faucet with NTUA's water source, but we have a new project coming up, and it's going to be with these water tanks right here. So we're going to be tapping into the LCR water line. So we're going to be having water being pumped from the Little Colorado River, and they're going to be filling these tanks for us. And so that's our new source. That's going to be our new source of watering our crops by next year. So we're going to try to aim for getting this project done by September to October. So that way we can start using water from our LCR region, because the water there, is pure. And when you're watering, you gotta think about what your plants like and what those microorganisms, all the microbes in your soil, what they'll like. So what we know is when our watering through NTUA, the water there has a lot of chlorine. And you gotta think about your health and soil. And when you're building soil health, you don't want all that to go to waste, because the chlorine, microbes don't like, the chlorine is what a lot of our worms don't like in our soil. So when we use chlorine, it kills a lot of that organic matter inside our soil. So that's why we want to switch to these tanks that run off the river, because the river water has no chlorine in it, and it's very good for watering your crops, and it does a real positive and really great outcome on your plants.
Okay, our next topic is on build relationships based on shared interests in food sovereignty. So my question to you is, what are the healthy nutritional advantages from having access to fresh produce?
Um, Having access to fresh produce, is starting your own garden. You gotta, we do a lot of our crops, and we like to grow them as seeds from seed, and we do a lot of seedling starts. And so the way we grow, we like to grow the healthy way, the organic way. Organic is a good way to grow your crop because it has a more delicious taste, a more sweet taste in your crops, and then also it's very healthy because it has the no pesticides, no herbicides, and non-GMO products inside our soil. And when you grow organically, you produce more food. And as you see, I've been harvesting a lot of these chilies. I harvest 1 week, and the next week they already have a whole lot of chilies coming out already. So, you know, and then when you start growing, don't be afraid to harvest your crops. Take them out when you know they're ready, because they'll start once you start harvesting. Those crops will just come out one after another, and they'll just keep coming out. So these chilies I have probably harvested ever since harvest started. This is my 8th round of harvesting these chilies. So I've been harvesting more than 4 pounds of jalapenos, 6 pounds of poblanos every time I harvest. And then we also have bell peppers at the end, and then we have our tomatoes on this side. And you just gotta plants. They can hear what you say. They can feel what you're feeling. And plants, they're just like humans. The way I see it, they're just like humans. They grow, and then you gotta have that relationship with them. You gotta talk with them. You guys greet them in the mornings. That's the way I do with my crops. And the more you respect your crops, they'll respect you back. And so I like to do a lot of that with my crop, because they can really be communicating towards you. And then we have our melons on this side that we are growing. Melons mixed with squash, and then a lot of our sunflower at the bottom, and then we have a lot of our corn. And so I love what to do, because I've been doing it ever since I was a little kid. My grandparents taught me the traditional way, of growing, and you gotta send prayers to our crops. You gotta be there to keep our crops company. They like that company. You being around them, you taking care of them, you being able to manage them all the time. And so the way I see on how to grow crops, you gotta have that relationship with it. You gotta be there to love it, because it provides you food and it gives to you. So,
Go ahead and talk about the youth involvement here with TLE, Lyle.
so we do a lot of work with our youth, and we do a lot of work with also we have um, work that we use. We collaborate work with Navajo Nation Workforce Development. So they like to hire a lot of their summer interns, and this demonstration site is a place that we like to recruit our youth, because we like to teach them about Navajo food sovereignty. We like to teach them about growing, because youth, they're very special to us. They're our next leaders in our next generation. And when you want to keep that food cycle going, when you want to keep that growing going, you got to teach them. You got to pass it on to those youth, so that way they can pass it on, and it keeps going like a cycle. And what we like to do with a lot of our youth too, when they really show us that they're interested in gardening, and then pretty much every youth that we have, they get really into our gardening. They like to grow, so we like to give them beds to do their own growing, and so that way and we don't let them sell the crops. We let them do whatever they want to with their crops. You know, if they want to give it away to their families, if they want to sell it, you know, they can do it. And so we like to teach a lot of our youth, and you know, a lot of our youth they love to grow. You know, this is a youth member that we have here, a volunteer, and then that we have here who is learning about growing, who is growing themselves. You know, and so it really lifts my spirit up when I see you know young youth members liking to grow, that love to grow, and who really love that way, um, that way of supporting your family. You know, because growing is one of the main purposes, and you know you got to have food to live. You know, and this is one of the main ways to do it. You know, one of the main ways, because and then also all the stories that I have been taught, the traditional stories from my grandparents. You know, I like to pass it on to youth because you know, youth when they grow, you know, they'll be able to share that knowledge to different people. They'll be able to share that knowledge with their families, with their kids, and you know, so that's why one of the main reasons why I love working with this organization is because we work with a lot of youth. So a lot of youth they learn off me, but then also I learn from them. You know, I learn their perspective of growing. I learn what they like to do, and so when you do that, you know, you have that bond, you have that relationship, and it really goes well with our plants. It really goes well with our crops, and you know, a lot of our youth, we teach them along the way. You know, we teach them about lasagna beds. We teach them about growing in the hoop house. We also teach them about starting our seeds. You know, because we have different methods and different steps of growing our seeds, and so a lot of our seeds we call it the breakfast, lunch, and dinner mix. So the breakfast mix is usually 50% cinder sand, 50% peat moss, and then we'll put them under a grow light. And once they sprout, you know, we let them get a little bit huge. And once they've reached their true, we call it a true leaf. It's their third leaf that comes out. And what that true leaf indicates is they're able to be on their own. Because when you start your seeds, they don't like being by themselves. They don't like sprouting by themselves. They like sprouting as a family. And then when you separate those, you know, they're able to be on their own. That's when they're called the lunch mix. The lunch mix is 25% peat moss, 25% cinder, and then 50% compost. And what that does is when we separate those seeds, we put them in different pots. They help their roots expand, and then we harden them off. So when we harden them off, we bring them outside. We let them sit outside, so they get used to that wind. They get used to the climate. They get used to how hot it is and how cold it gets here. And then, you know, that's when you put them into the dinner mix. And the dinner mix is when you actually plant them in your soil. And then, so you can use mycorrhizal. It's a root enhancer. So what it does is it helps our roots expand, and it helps our plants get tougher. So that way, you know, they don't have any issues growing, and they'll be used to our soil already.
Lyle, how is growing your garden a benefit to a family's well-being or buying fresh, locally grown produce?
So we buy a lot of our local produce from different growers here in the Loop Bird Springs and Tolani Lake area, and we like to share them with families. And buying locally produce, you know, is a good example on how we encourage families to grow their own, because you know, growing their own, you know, they get to experience, you know, the way of growing. You know, they get to experience um, the problems you have with it, but then also the positive thoughts that are with it. And so, and what we like to do is we like to use our local growers as an example of how to make a profit off your growing, and then also how to have that in your life. And so we try to always encourage local growers to keep growing their food, so that way we can share it with families, so that way we can share it through our mobile pop-up cafe, so that way we can share it through our way of growing, you know, because growing is a way of life. Growing is something you'll do to keep yourself busy, and then also, you know, it's a teaching for you, because there's all different type of teachings to growing, and there's different stories behind it. And so But I like working with our local growers, and I like working with buying from our local growers because buying locally is also an example of how you can start as a farm because if you want to make profit off your crops, you gotta go out there, you gotta sell, you gotta go out to farmers market, you gotta find ways to make your money back with growing, and growing is a really good way to do it. You can grow with different. You can use your organic crops as a way to make money off of it, and we try to encourage a lot of our local producers to keep doing that because it benefits them and then it benefits their families and their loved ones. So right here we have our fruit orchards. We have different varieties of apples, peaches, and plums. So these were planted back in 2012, and right now we've been producing apples. I just recently harvested a lot of these apples just last week on Friday, and then we have been harvesting peaches, and so they take a while to grow, but then we like to grow them as a family. So they like to be grown right next to each other as a family. So fruit orchards, they like to be together as a family when you want to grow them. And then the roots, you gotta give them you gotta have a good amount of space of loose soil because their roots will expand. Fruit orchards are just like corn. The more their roots will expand, the bigger their growth will be. And so that's what we like to do. Is we like to keep a lot of the root system inside the bottom of our roots. So this next year, what we're going to do is we're going to be growing a lot of herbs around the bottom of our orchard because herbs have a lot of roots to them. So what they'll do is they'll help loosen up the soil for our orchards to grow even bigger and taller to even produce even more food. This is our fruit trees, and then we have some raised beds right here. So this is an example of our raised beds. And what I have done was I had this last week I had direct seeded our cold crops, our lettuce, our kale, and now they have all sprouted. They're all coming out. And so this area I like to do a lot of the leafy greens, a lot of our winter crops, and then we like to keep this space for a lot of our fruits. So this is where we develop a lot of our fruits at.
Okay, Lyle, how does your soil play a part in your growing system here?
So we have solar panels right here, and these solar panels are probably the first project that were built here on TLE, the TLE garden site. And right now we have a lot of power source to that solar panel. But what we have finalized about this solar panels is we're going to use the solar panels to help pump our tanks. So a lot of our projects, we're having a big project on our water tanks that are going to be running out from the LCR region. And what this solar panel is going to do is it's going to pump. These solars are going to be used to power those water pumps to be able to water our irrigation. Because what we're thinking first is we're going to have everything be gravity flow for our irrigation, but we noticed that it's not going to really do a lot of pumping. It's not going to irrigate a lot of our crops, and it's just going to be a slow irrigation. So that's why we came up with the idea for running these solar panels to power our water pumps that we're going to have out here. So that way we don't have to use NTUA electric, and so that's one source of us saving money. And solar is a really good way to go especially if you live somewhere that doesn't have power lines that run to your home, And solar panels, they can power a lot of things. They can do a lot of ways. And as you see, we have a small solar panel here as well. So this is our sanitation area. We like to sanitize a lot of our crops. So we go through the food safety plan, and our food safety plan is a very simple way to grow your crops. What the solar panel does, it powers this nozzle right here, and it goes from the battery. We keep that battery charged, and we have a little water pump. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna put a water tank right here. So that way, whenever we need to turn it on, that water pump will already have power from the solar, and it'll be filling our water as well. And so this is an area where we're going to be sanitizing our crops. So we like to do different methods. When we sanitize our crops, we clean them, we rinse them off with clear water first, and then we'll go to the next step, and then we'll have the next step, which would be water with Clorox, and then we'll dip our crops in there for 5 seconds, and we'll take them out. Then we have another station where it has another thing of purified water, and what we do is after we take it out from the Clorox water, we'll dip it into the clean, purified water so that it will be sanitized, and that's a way we sanitize our crops. And then we have a walk-in cooler inside our home and inside our building that we store our crops in. And that's one of our ways that we're going to be practicing our food safety plan.
Okay, where do you go to sell your produce?
So what we do is we like to go to a lot of farmer markets. So there's farmers markets that happen out in Flag. There's farmers markets that happen out in Loop. And then all on the other side of the Navajo Nation, such as Chinle, Lukajigay, Saley, and all different areas, we find out Ganado, Burnside, and then they do a lot of farmers markets as well. So we like to take our crops down there, and then we like to sell our crops. That's how we make profit off of our crops. And then these trailers is gonna be we're gonna make this trailer into a cooler trailer, so that way it's just like a walk-in cooler. So when we need to transport our crops to a different area, they stay cool and they stay good. So that's one way, and then also the other ways, we'll advertise them on social media, and then also we'll advertise them from here in the office too. So we have family members that know us, because Tolani Lake is really well known for growing a lot of crops, and I have families that come into my office, and they ask if we're selling crops, and they ask if we're selling produce, and so that's one of the ways. Also, one of the ways that we do our selling is from right out from Tolani Lake Enterprises.
What about in terms of seeds?
In terms of seeds, it's called a seed exchange. So we do a lot of seed exchange with different communities, and we'll either switch them, we'll exchange them for their seeds, or we'll sell seeds too. So I like to save a lot of seeds from lettuce, a lot of seeds from squash, melons, and then corn. So what I usually do is I let them dry out. I'll wash them, and I'll let them dry, and then I'll bag them. So that way when families are looking for seeds, we have seeds at our storage as well.
Okay, in closing, Lyle, are there any tips or advice you want to give out to individuals, families, etc., in terms of them wanting to start their own gardening?
I just advise you keep growing, keep learning to grow your own food, keep continuing to learn, and then learn about the traditional way of growing, keep that traditional story moving forward, keep that traditional story to our next generation, because, growing is a part of life. Growing is an important way to keep going, there's stories behind it. Learn the stories behind it, and, keep having that knowledge, keep having that respect, keep that in your life, and it's a good feeling, it's a good thing, it's a beautiful way to see nature. Keep that wonderful way in your life. Keep that beauty. Give back to Mother Nature, give back to Mother Earth. And growing traditionally, is a way to do it. I advise you to keep growing, keep pushing yourself to grow, and you'll make something of yourself when you do it. You're gonna run into problems here and there, but that's that's all part of life. That's all part of growing. Just keep moving forward with good thoughts, good prayers, and positive ways, positive thoughts. And then also, I want to thank the Dine Community Development Corporation and their funder, Native American Agricultural Fund, for giving me the opportunity to share this with the community, with the youth, with the elders, and then also giving me the opportunity to share with families. And this is Tolani Lake Enterprises, and we are in Tolani Lake, Arizona, and this is our main office location. And then, if you have questions, if you have to ask me, feel free to call me or feel free to email me at lyle@tolanilake.org, and I would gratefully be able to give you advice, especially when it has to do with growing, when it has to do with market gardening. And if you just need someone to get advice from, feel free to call me. Give me an email.
Okay, this will conclude our third session in terms of Navajo Food Sovereignty Initiative by Lyle Yazzie. Lyle.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.